The Beatles started a ton of trends that soon became par for the course among their rock peers. One of them was the practice of giving a song a title that wasn't actually a part of the refrain or even mentioned in the song. At a time when most pop songs relied on instantly recognizable hooks, often repeating the title over and over, the band showed that a title could function more like a thematic doorway than a literal lyric. It invited listeners to interpret, to imagine, and to engage more deeply with what they were hearing. A few of these tracks stand among the most beloved in their catalog. Here are 4 times the Fab Four threw us a titular curveball. Tomorrow Never Knows.
Turn off your mind, relax and float downstream.
John Lennon's personality was a fascinating jumble of contradictions. On the one hand, he insisted on boldly pushing his lyrics into uncharted territory, often exploring themes that few mainstream artists would dare touch in the mid-1960s. On the other hand, he could be surprisingly cautious about how those ideas might be received, occasionally masking their intensity behind ambiguity or humor. Tomorrow Never Knows epitomizes this dichotomy. The lyrics detail John Lennon's fascination with the Tibetan Book of the Dead, a spiritual text that explores the nature of consciousness, death, and rebirth. Drawing from these ideas, Lennon crafted a song that encouraged listeners to turn off your mind, relax, and float downstream, offering a radically new perspective on existence to a 1960s audience still rooted in conventional pop themes. Musically, the track was just as groundbreaking. Built around a single chord drone, tape loops, and experimental studio effects, it represented a leap forward in what rock music could be. Yet despite all this conceptual weight, Lennon chose not to title the song after its philosophical content. Instead, he borrowed a phrase often used by Ringo Starr, "Tomorrow never knows," a quirky, almost nonsensical saying. The result is a fascinating contrast, a deeply spiritual, avant-garde composition paired with a title that feels casual and offhand. That disconnect only adds to the mystique of the song, reinforcing the idea that meaning doesn't always need to be spelled out explicitly. A Day in the Life.
I read the news today, oh boy.
By the time the Beatles came to the making of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, they were trying something new practically every time they were in the studio. The album itself was conceived as a kind of conceptual performance, allowing the band to step outside their identities and experiment freely. A Day in the Life took that boundary pushing to the extreme. It's a hybrid of 2 separate Lennon and McCartney compositions, one dreamlike and observational, the other grounded in everyday routine, that somehow lock into place with astonishing cohesion. Much of that cohesion can be credited to George Martin, whose orchestral arrangements and innovative production techniques helped bridge the gap between the song's contrasting sections. Notably, the song doesn't really have a traditional refrain or chorus. Instead, it unfolds like a series of vignettes, newspaper headlines, personal reflections, and mundane morning rituals, all connected by those famous swelling orchestral crescendos. Without a repeating lyrical anchor, the band had the freedom to choose a title that captured the essence rather than the specifics. A Day in the Life does exactly that. It suggests a snapshot of existence, a collage of moments that feel both ordinary and profound. Even though the phrase itself never appears in the lyrics, it perfectly encapsulates the mood. Today, just hearing the title is enough to send chills down the spine of rock fans, instantly conjuring the haunting final piano chord and the sense of awe that accompanies it. The Inner Light.
Without going out of my door, I can know.
While you might say the other Beatles just dipped their feet in the pool, George Harrison dove headlong with the practice of adding Eastern music touches to his songs. His growing interest in Eastern philosophy and spirituality didn't just influence his guitar playing, it reshaped his entire approach to songwriting. For a catalog as well known as that of the Fab Four, The Inner Light is somewhat unheralded. It first appeared as the B-side to Lady Madonna in 1968, which meant it didn't receive the same level of attention as the band's major A-side releases. As a result, many listeners overlooked it for years, especially in markets where singles weren't as widely collected. Yet the song is a gem. Recorded with Indian classical musicians, it features traditional instruments and a serene, meditative atmosphere. Harrison's lyrics, inspired by Eastern texts, reflect on the power of the mind and the idea that true understanding comes from within rather than from external experience. Interestingly, the inner light never appears in the lyrics. Instead, it serves as a guiding concept, a philosophical lens through which the song can be understood. The words Harrison sings circle around the idea without naming it directly, allowing listeners to arrive at the meaning themselves. In that sense, the absence of the title within the lyrics actually enhances the song's spiritual message. Yer Blues. The Beatles were all over the place on the White Album, both physically and stylistically. The recording sessions were famously fragmented, with band members often working separately or in small groups rather than as a unified whole. Tensions were high, and the sense of camaraderie that had defined their earlier years was beginning to fray. But on certain songs, like Yer Blues, all four men came together in the same room and recaptured a bit of their old chemistry. The track was recorded live in a cramped spot at Abbey Road, giving it a raw, almost claustrophobic energy that perfectly suits its subject matter. In the midst of an album filled with folk experiments, avant-garde sound collages, and polished pop tunes, Yer Blues stands out as a deliberately rough, back-to-basics performance. Lennon delivers the vocals with a kind of anguished intensity, channeling the spirit of traditional blues while also subverting it with lines that veer into dark humor and existential despair. The title itself is telling. The purposeful misspelling, your instead of yours, adds a layer of looseness and irreverence, signaling that this isn't a straightforward homage. And while the phrase doesn't appear in the lyrics, it frames the song as something shared between performer and listener. These aren't just Lennon's blues, they're Yer Blues too, something anyone can recognize and feel. That subtle shift in perspective makes the song more inclusive, even as its tone remains deeply personal. It's another example how the Beatles used titles not just as labels, but as extensions of the ideas embedded in their music. In each of these cases, the Beatles demonstrated that a song title didn't have to be literal to be powerful. By separating the title from the lyrics, they created space for interpretation, inviting listeners to engage with their music on a deeper level. It's a small detail on the surface, but one that speaks volumes about their creativity and why their work continues to resonate decades later.